Hello, friends. All right, more Bible study. We're still using the NIV, and personally, I like to use the NIV when I'm doing this kind of video talk because it tends to have more plain language. It doesn't have the thous, the these, the thous, and you find that in the King James version. But when we're trying to make something clear, language that people no longer speak is not necessarily the best choice. That's my opinion. This parable is, we're in Luke chapter 20, 27 through 39. The resurrection and marriage is the parable. Some of the Sadducees who say there is no resurrection came to Jesus with a question. "Teacher," they said, "Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but no children, the man must marry the widow and have children for his brother." Like, you don't get to claim your own kids. They're your brother's kids. That's what goes down in the record, is that they're your brother's kids, not your kids. Now there were 7 brothers. The first one married a woman and died childless. The second, and then the third married her. And in the same way, the 7 died, which we should really look at that family. Why are they all dying so young? Leaving no children. Finally, the woman died too. I mean, maybe she just didn't want to be married to them. Now then, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be, since the 7 were married to her? Jesus replied, the people of this age marry and are given in marriage. But those who are considered worthy of taking part in that age and in that resurrection from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage. And they can no longer die. For they are like the angels. They are God's children, since they are children of the resurrection. But in the account of the bush, even Moses showed that the dead rise. For he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. For to him all are alive. Some of the teachers of the law responded, "Well said, teacher." And no one dared to ask him more questions. Because remember, first, they're trying to trick him into saying the wrong words so they have an excuse to kill him. So he's being careful with his words, and he's also being truthful. If you actually look at what is going on in a marriage ceremony, yes, it's body to body because it's person to person, but it's also supposed to be soul to soul. That's what the proper marriage is a soul connection. The people in our family, the people in our friends, are soulmates. Soulmates are people that we have long-term soul connections, either in this life or in lives previous or any of the rest of that stuff. These people are questioning in the way they are because they don't believe in the resurrection in the first place, and they're trying to get him to say that the resurrection isn't real. And what he's saying to them is the resurrection isn't happening the way you think it is. If you actually look at in the terms of across multiple cultures, what's in the marriage ceremony is that term, "till death do us part." Till death do us part. When you're no longer in a vessel, you are of energy. Any contracts you made while you were in the vessel no longer exist. Death gets you out of all the contracts. And they're also, he's like, the bigger problem is that you guys are trying to figure out what heaven's going to look like by placing it in the context of this realm and this reality. And you're worried about how you're going to get things that you need in the 3D now, when in that realm you don't need any of them. You don't have a body, so you have no bodily concerns. You don't need any of those things once you're dead. Just as you wouldn't need to be able to eat when you no longer are trying to keep your vessel alive, so when your soul is in heaven, your soul doesn't need to eat because it doesn't have a vessel to keep alive. But they in that age, they couldn't even begin to get that concept. And that's one of the things with the Bible, why we're supposed to keep going back to it and keep reading what was actually said. Because the people who were teaching it as it moves forward through time didn't have the basic education level that we have in almost any, certainly in any first world country, anywhere. They didn't have the basic education. They didn't know how to read. The average person couldn't read. They couldn't write. They didn't know any math. They couldn't read these words for themselves. They could only listen to what other people were telling them. They didn't have the information from the source, let alone the proper explanation of it, for it to move forward through time, for them to get what they're supposed to get from it. That's why we're supposed to be going back. We're not going to have bodies in heaven. He says so. It's in there. So I don't know why anybody's concerning about how they're going to have the ability to take care of their body in heaven. Angels don't have vessels. So if we're going to be like the angels, we're not going to be made of matter material, because angels don't have bodies.